mandatory recycling, while sounding politically correct, does not meet our present needs. In fact, this plan can actually harm our system more than it would help it. One of the major concerns of the cost of the program that our opponents are proposing. Mandatory recycling would create the need for more trucks. This means more fuel consumption and more air pollution. In Rhode Island, the net cost of recycling often exceeds $180 per ton, compared to $120 to $160 for ordinary waste collection and disposal. In Chicago, the recycling costs range from $515 to $990 per ton, compared to $110 per ton in revenues, NCPA 1999. To quote the NCPA article, some say that the program would create more jobs, but who would pay for these jobs? The answer: we would. If a mandatory recycling plan were implemented, its high costs would be passed on to the consumer either directly or in our taxes. Recycling program could be a drain on the finances of our state and our parents. Another major concern of a mandatory recycling program is it doesn't really help us, but it hurts us. Besides increased costs, recycling can also hurt our environment, as noted with the example of de-inking newsprint or the effects of more trucks on the road. In conclusion, let me again refer to my list of myths and remind you of these truths. 1. We are not running out of landfill space. 2. Recycling paper does not save trees. 3. Most disposables are not bad. And finally, 4. Recycling is not always good. A recycling program would increase our expenses with questionable benefit to the people or environment. My partner and I do not support the resolution. Be it resolved that the state of Utah adopt a comprehensive program of recycling for all communities within its borders. Thank you. Please vote negative.
Once again, my partner and I do not believe that the concept of recycling is wrong, but we do know that we should not go too far with it. It is because of this that we do not support the resolution. Be it resolved that the state of Utah adopt a comprehensive program of recycling for all communities within its borders. Okay, first of all, they're making it sound like a lot of people would recycle, but the fact is some people would recycle, but some people wouldn't. There is no law currently in Utah making people recycle. And because of that, people could still get away with not recycling. So there's really no way to make them recycle. Also, we never exactly said that recycling was bad for people. We only said that if we do too much, it will hurt us and that we're in the perfect position right here. But if we go far enough with that comprehensive program, things will happen, such as unsanitary recycled medical tools will cause patients to become infected, as Dr. Knoll's hospital has. Dr. Noel Irwin claimed that he found recycled skin staplers that shed dry blood, tubes clogged with feeding materials, bloody angioplasty balloons, and a large biopsy needle containing pinkish fluid and a piece of severed skin. U.S. News and World Report, September 2000, 1999. On another note, de-inking plants that take the ink out of newspaper and papers are not very safe because for every 2.5 tons of paper they de-ink, they produce 1 ton of toxic sludge. Why would we want to recycle one thing to produce an even more dangerous material? Consumers Resource Magazine, April 1994. Okay. Also, they're saying about the methane gas being hurtful to the environment, but the fact is, now Utah landfills are beginning to sell methane to other places for energy, such as Kennecott and Hill Air Force Base. Jill Fletcher, 2002. Also, they said that our recycling plans are not working. But I will read to you again that our recycling plants are working. One of our recycling plants is the Utah Christmas Tree Program. It was created in 1999, and every year around Christmas, it gets and recycles over 337 tons of trees. www.slvwmf.net 2000. There's also the SPRA, which diverts around 21,600 tons of wood and other more organic materials from the dump every year. SPRA website, 2000. There's also the Y Recycling Corporation. which reduces all waste sent to the dump by 60%, EPA 2002. Also, Salt Lake City is also planning to implement a curbside recycling program in late 2000 to early 2003. So why would we just want to make another one right before that at the expense of our taxpayers? Jill Fletcher, Salt Lake City Landfill, 2002. And finally, there's the Cache Valley Cleanup Team. The CVCT diverts nearly 73% of all commercial waste, which is waste thrown away by businesses, from the dumps every year. Clifton Phillips, recycle at LoganUtah.org, 2000. So as you can see, we have attacked many of their points, and that we already have good recycling programs. Thank you.
Okay, first, when they said they're running out of room in the landfills, we just proved in the 1AC that we are running out of landfill space, and so we've already answered that. And then with the paper, they're only talking about recycling paper, and also they said that recycling paper doesn't save trees because we won't be planting trees. But then if we plant a lot of trees and then we cut them down for paper, then what is the use of planting all these trees? Instead, why don't we just plant trees and then recycle the paper so we won't have to cut those trees down again? And then you can drop their methane argument because you weren't allowed to bring arguments into the rebuttal speeches. And then with their disposables aren't bad, look at our harms too. With Woolsey, he has a type of brain cancer called gliosarcoma. That proves that the disposables are bad. And then with their whole argument about taxes, we're going to use fiat, which means that we want to argue, we don't want to argue whether we would be able to pass this plan, but whether we should. And with their whole taxes argument, so you can just drop that. And then also with their plan hurts more than helps. Okay, we've just proved in our 1AC and our 2AC that it hurts a lot because the people are sitting here taking up all these, like, getting brain cancer and all these tumors and stuff. And so it proves that it is bad. And with their more trucks, recycling would make more trucks and cause more air pollution. Well, incinerators pollute more, and so we aren't polluting as much as incinerators, and if we recycle them, we won't have to use incinerators as much. Therefore, recycling would pollute less. But also, with the recycling costs a lot, we answered that in the 1AC and the 2AC, and so you can just bring across our arguments. And then with the arguments about Maine and Chicago isn't Utah, and so you can just drop those arguments. And they said that people weren't recycling, and yet later they said that recycling works, especially with their factories already recycle, and so they just contradicted themselves right there. And then they said that people probably wouldn't recycle just because there isn't a law or anything, and that's why we're making it mandatory. Our plan says that we're going to mandate that the people recycle. And so we've argued every one of their arguments. They haven't argued every single one of ours, and so I think that you should vote aye.
All right. First of all, I'd like to start off when they said making it mandatory for recycling. Like we said before, it is unconstitutional, and you can't make a law requiring people to recycle. It's unconstitutional. Recycling costs more in Utah, and as my partners already stated, they said that we are running out of landfill space, but I'd like to again refer to my list of myths, and let me reread that. Myth 1 is we are running out of landfill space. This is not true. All of the garbage that America produces in the next 1,000 years would fit in a landfill that occupies less than 1/10 of 1% of the continental United States. Or in other words, it would fill an area 44 miles on each side and about 120 feet deep. NCPA 1990. We are allowed to bring in the methane argument because they are allowed to bring in new evidence to attack the point. Recycling rates are rising, as we have already stated. New landfills are not being made. And they said that instead of cutting down trees, we should just use recycled paper. But I'd like to refute that with my list of myths. In an article published in Access to Energy, August 2002, it states that recycled paper is of poorer quality and of higher cost than unrecycled paper. The higher cost of production is passed on to us, and then that makes it so that the recycling paper does not save trees. All it does is it makes it's just no desire to plant one. And when we were talking about Rhode Island and Chicago, we were talking about them because they said there's just two places of many that have, two places in the United States that have had recycling implemented, and they're doing recycling, but it's actually costing more and more money than if it wasn't. And I'll just refer back to that, as it costs $180 per ton to recycle in Rhode Island when it only costs $120 to $160 per ton for ordinary waste collection. It costs $515 to $990 per ton compared to $110. And I'd like to go back to a Utah statistic. Recycling material costs much more than just putting it into a landfill. Do you know that to recycle 1 ton of garbage costs $70, where it only costs $19 to place it in the landfill? That's over 3.5 times as much money. That was from Mitch Wilkinson, Waste News 2002, and that is a Utah statistic. So as you can see, we have the better argument, so please vote negative.
First of all, they said that they kept referring back to the list of myths. However, we did rebuttal everything on their list of myths, and we had better evidence and more evidence supporting everything we said against their list of myths, and they had supporting their evidence of list of myths. They had the list of myths, and they had one card for each of their list of myths. However, we had more than one card for everything we rebutted, especially because 2 or 3 of their list of myths were talking about the same thing. And so things like they said that they're running out of landfill space in the 2AC and in the 1AC and in the 1AR. We rebutted all of these with about 4 cards. And then we said that they aren't allowed to bring in new evidence, and they said that they are allowed to bring in new evidence because we did. However, we didn't bring in any new evidence because we didn't bring in any new cards. All we did was just rebuttal, and you're not allowed to bring in new evidence in the rebuttals because that is the rule. Those are the rules of policy. So you should drop their Utah statistics argument that they brought up at the end. You should drop also they're talking about what my partner said about how they were rebuttaling our methane gas thing, and then our methane gas point, and then they said that that recycling paper is bad, and that by recycling paper we're just making things worse. However, if we're recycling paper, we're reusing the paper, and they never said that we're not going to plant trees. They said that they think that people are going to stop wanting to plant trees. However, they never proved that that's going to happen. So just because we're recycling paper doesn't mean people are going to stop planting trees. It just means that if we recycle paper, we're going to have more trees, and it's going to be better. And then they said that they said that Chicago and Maine were just examples. However, we proved that it's different in Utah because we proved that incinerators and landfills cost more than recycling in Utah. Therefore, you have to drop those arguments because they don't relate to the topic. And again, they didn't answer all of our arguments, so I'm just going to back up what my partner said in the 1AR. About fiat, recycling costs less, and through fiat we're arguing whether or not we should, not whether or not we would. So through fiat, cost is guaranteed. And then they did contradict themselves because they said that they wanted that recycling wasn't bad, and they said that recycling people are unwilling to recycle, and then they said people are willing to recycle, and we have recycling programs. And then one really big point is that they said in the 1NR, I'm pretty sure, they said that we never said recycling is bad. They said that and they also said that there's no law making people recycle, meaning that recycling is good, so you should recycle, and meaning that that's why you need to follow through with their plan. That's why you should vote aye.